Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Upward Spiral podcast. I am thrilled to have a friend and colleague on the show today, Dr. Stephanie Moss. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Amazing. So, short bio on Stephanie, and then I'll let her fill in any gaps on anything I may have missed. But Dr. Stephanie Moss is a current psychiatry resident at Rosalind Franklin University. She received her medical doctorate from Rush Medical College. She is a Latina, non-traditional first-generation doctor. And through her countless hurdles and academic challenges with the MCAT, failing the Step 1 exam twice, taking a leave of absence from medical school and living with invisible chronic health conditions and disabilities, Dr. Moss has really made it her mission and lifelong dedication to be a voice for marginalized communities and really promote diversity, health equity, and inclusion. So, through all of that, Dr. Moss has built really a beautiful community, a brand, and everything in between. Podcast has contributed to our newsletter, the Wellness Wake Up Med School Edition, and is really a shining star among early career physicians. So, anything I missed, Stephanie?
You're so kind. No, I think that was a great summary.
Excellent. So speaking of your brand and everything you're doing, like, as I mentioned, so Stephanie has a website, medpsychmoss.com, and has her blog, podcast, videos, and so much content for med students, pre-med, residents, and attendings. And um, what brought you to, beyond, we'll talk about what brought you to medicine, right? But what brought you to say, okay, here's psychiatry and there's one passion, but I'm also going to build this brand and touch the lives of so many through a community. What brought you to that part of all this?
Good question. Like, it's actually, I do want to state just the interesting of when you kept saying that the word brand, it kind of triggered me, interesting enough, because when people think of brand, people and they have used that when I've tried to help others and to share the knowledge, are like, oh, we don't want you to advertise, don't want to brand. Before I was doing a lot of stuff I'm doing more recently, like I wasn't making any money. I was just trying to help other medical students, other individuals, like I said. And it was only maybe the past month or two that I actually started charging money because I just didn't have the time in residency to be mentoring so many medical students. But so that's just an interesting. But before, what was I was so passionate about is the fact that I had gone through so many challenges myself being in medicine without any advice from family members. Both my husband and I went through medical school together, and neither of us have anyone in the medical community. So it felt very lonely every time we had challenges. There was no one to turn to, and so that's kind of been always my motivation. And when I've gone through those challenges and thought through, I know that eventually, once I got to the other side, I just developed tons of resources just for myself and my own understanding that now I can hopefully make the process a little bit shorter so they don't also have to go through all the struggles that I went.
Wow. Yeah, and I hope you know I use the word brand in the most positive sense.
Oh, I,
In
I know
that
you
you
did.
have,
No, no, no.
yes, yes, yes. No, and I love that because I didn't encounter that phrase either until I started putting more content out there myself.
Mm,
Right. So we had a similar journey to that where someone used that word with me, and I was like, well, that's interesting. Um,
Yeah.
so now I use that term maybe a little different than those who said it to you and I, in terms of more so a an ideal, or kind of like this is what we're trying to put out there, right? So
Mm,
for me, my
yeah.
brand is mental health advocacy, right? So that's, I think of more of it like that. I'm trying to kind of, because I think others do use it more of just kind of like financial, right? But I don't make any money off of what I do. And even whether you do or don't, I think a brand is really just me, right? And you is
Mm,
you. Like we're our own brand, like ourselves, right?
I think
So
right.
anytime you're putting stuff online, you're representing yourself in a certain way, whether
yeah.
doing it intentionally or not. And you're creating a brand, whether you like, again, like you do it intentionally or not, and just what you want to put out there, what you want people to see that you stand for.
That's such
Like
a
the
good
Dr.
point, and I
G.
love that.
Mhm.
Dr. G's brand is growing herself. We've been talking about that in a few recent podcasts, starting her private practice and all the
Mm,
content you put out there. And so this is why we bring wonderful individuals like Dr. Moss on our podcast, because it's there's so much overlap with our overall goal. So what have been some of the positives in everything that's been building with the community that you've created? Because you do have quite a large following and community, and which is wonderful, because in my mind, I think to myself when I see that, when I see your followers and I see the content you're then putting out there, such as help for tips on the board exams, you failed the exam, now what's next, right? Because
hmm
to me that's so useful. I'm in the medical education field, so I see that, students are concerned, I'm in that point, now what, right? And you don't always have peers, family, friends who know what that feels like. So now you've created that community, to kind of go back to that, where you could, as a med student, pre-med student, you can kind of feel safe
Yeah.
to have gone through something like that and now have a resource. So what are some of the positives you've seen through all this now?
Yes, no, and I'm so glad you mentioned that of the positives, because definitely the positives always outweigh any challenges, thankfully, and that's why I keep doing it. I one of the things that the things that bring me so much joy is when I receive a message, either by email or by like a DM of someone saying, I saw your video, or I read one of your articles on Doximity, and I'm going through that too. And finally someone's talking about it. And it means so much to me. One, that I made them feel less alone. And that's kind of been the whole motivation, because we know from the mental health field how much people, when they're in that space of feeling so alone, they can they can go to a really dark place. And there's a reason why in healthcare we have such high burnout rates and even high suicide rates, higher than the rest of the community. And it's again, it's the feeling alone. And so that has been one of my motivations for doing the podcast, for doing social media, is helping people feel less alone. And then through being able to connect with those individuals, I'm starting to figure out how can we then connect those individuals, that they can form kind of another community. Because I remember when I went through my leave of absence, at first, it was horrendous, and I almost gave up on medicine completely because I thought that I was done for. I thought that no one would ever accept me back into medical school. No one could ever accept me into residency because I had failed a medical school exam, step one. And little by little, as I started talking to other individuals, we started realizing there were a lot of us that had failed or had been or were currently on a leave of absence. And we created a community group where it ended up being 20 of us, 20 out of I think it was 144 that we started in our class. 20 people were currently on a leave of absence and going through it alone. But it wasn't until we talked openly, we found and we developed that group, that we were all able to push through our own individual reasons why we were taking a a leave of absence and be able to overcome them, be able to get back to our medical school education to eventually graduate, to eventually match and continue on. So I'm currently trying to do that again. Is I've spoken with so many medical students over the past couple of years through writing articles, through making a podcast, through making blogs. I have now all these individuals. I'm starting to now like trying to put them together because I know how important that is when people have other people they can talk to and on a more regular basis, more in a candid way. So not just me, a mentor, but actually a peer group. So that's my current little thing that I'm doing is bringing people to a support group so they can
Wow.
support each other.
And I just want to acknowledge you for the bravery and courage that it takes to talk about these things, because we all know, we've been there and we know the stigma around taking a leave of absence, around failing exams, and how many people, friends of ours, colleagues who gave up on medicine, just like you said, because they felt that like very intense shame happening in isolation. And it's funny when it can be acknowledged and you find people that are all going through the same thing, that shame just dissipates because you're like, it's not just me. There's
Mhm.
clearly, maybe there's like systemic things going on that are affecting our ability to like succeed in these different things or the support that we need. And it's just the work that you're doing is very, very important.
Thank
Yes.
you.
And I agree. And you say, you know, about 20 students at that time, right? When you were at that point in your med school journey, were on leave, right? That's pretty average, right? And if you multiply that by the number of medical schools in the country, at any given time, you probably have thousands of students in the US on leave, right?
Wow.
And so you're speaking to so many students who don't have that type of person to say, who has gone through it, right? A resident physician to speak to them and say, I've been through your shoes and look where I'm at now,
Mhm.
right? I have
Mhm.
students come to me and in a way I can't relate to them because I didn't fail my board exam. So I try to tell them that, I try to educate them on the holistic process of the match now and different changes that are being made, but that's only so much, right? So to have a resource like you, Dr. Moss, to be able to share your story is huge. So that's
Mhm.
one thing that came to mind because I agree, G, there probably is things. It's not just on the student. There probably is systemic things within medical education that need change. The fact that we've changed our first board exams to pass fail highlights that
Mhm.
this is evolving, right? And it's going to continue to evolve, and that the residency selection process does need to become more and more holistic, right?
Mhm.
We need to be looking at more and more different things. I did very poorly on my MCAT, which would tell you that years ago they said that was a sole predictor of success. Well, guess what? I'm here, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Now a study has come out saying, no, 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 it's MCAT plus your GPA in undergrad, right? So what's going to come out next? So that was just one point I thought of. And another point I want to quickly make is I just saw a study recently that a colleague shared. You were talking about loneliness, right? And a study recently came out. It was a survey conducted from 2009 to 2021. And I believe it was of medical students, if I'm not mistaken. But it was a survey on loneliness as a predictor of depression, anxiety, mental health disorders. And it was positively predictive, right? That a strong sense of loneliness, which again is not, I'm sure, not surprising, but it's something that maybe it is, right? As in and of itself as a predictor of future, mental health disorders, right? So, you're creating a community where students from across the country can feel less lonely, and I think that's a beautiful thing.
Thank you. Yes, I think exactly what you said there. There is so many individuals out there, and it's so important to recognize and normalize it as it just, there is not one way to be a medical student or to be a doctor. There are different paths.
Yeah.
100%.
Did you ever have hesitancy sharing your story? Were you ever afraid to share your story of negative impacts from that? What was going through your mind at that time?
Hmm. I think definitely I was very scared.
to go into residency. There was so many, that was one of the reasons I dual applied. I applied to family medicine and psychiatry because there wasn't a guarantee. And of course, there's never a guarantee that you're going to match, but I tried to increase my chances as much as possible. And it was so meaningful to speak with residency programs and them being able to either verbally or just by inviting me to an interview and showing me that it didn't matter that I had those red flags in quotes. Um, what they cared about is me as a person and who I was going to be as a resident and a future doctor.
Mhm.
And that made me feel so validated. And it allowed me to open up even more. When I was going through the process, let's say the first half, they knew obviously my scores, but that was it. It wasn't until kind of halfway through where I had the privilege of it having enough interviews that I said, you know what, I'm going to start to self-disclose that I have um, a disability and see how they react and see if I'm going to be accepted, even though I have a disability. So I did kind of a self science project on myself. It was terrifying, but I'm so glad I did that because I ended up in the program that I am now. That is so passionate about wellness
Wow.
and real wellness instead of just using it as a word. We have a day off every single day every single week where we do didactics, where we focus on our own wellness, where we can talk openly to the program director about our health conditions or our needs, and they're addressed and helped, and it's not looked down upon. People can take off sick and it being no different than them just saying they are going to a conference. Like there is no backlash, which is phenomenal. And that's my experience for the past 3.5 months. Maybe it'll change, but I don't think so, especially talking to the third and fourth year residents. There's a reason why they chose to be here. And I'm so glad that I am a part of an organization that hopefully will continue that community and tradition for future residents.
Wow. I think there's something really important to highlight there that you being honest and being completely authentic was what led you to you ending up exactly where you're meant to be in that place. And you would you want to be in a place where they don't accept you for who you are completely altogether? I think that's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yep.
And that's exactly what I tell other medical students is like, doesn't matter how you do it, but you want, at the end of the day, you want to be in a program that you can be you
Right.
on and they will respect you and care about you as an individual.
Mhm.
It made me think of my interview for residency at Greenwich
Mhm.
Hospital, where Dr. G and I did our residency in Greenwich, Connecticut, because one of the first things that drew me in at that interview was when the chief resident spoke about the wellness committee and showed pictures of all the residents hanging out together and doing fun activities. And it that was like, wow, they really put wellness at the forefront. So it made me think of that. Actually, Dr. G became one of the chairs of our wellness committee later on in residency, which just shows her passion for wellness, which is why we all love her. She's fantastic. And another thing I thought about is we have half of the physician panel here of the upcoming virtual wellness retreat coming in December. So I am so blessed that Dr. Papia and Dr. Moss will be on that panel because they'll be able to share their stories. So any medical students, pre-med students watching, December 18th, virtual wellness retreat hosted by MindSplit Cafe, myself, and the Med School Edition newsletter are going to have two of our core physicians right here, Dr. Papia and Dr. Moss. It's going to be really cool. So I think that that's really, really wonderful what you're doing. And I'm glad you did share your story. I face similar fears wanting to share my story, but just like for yourself, you kind of look now back and say, "Wow, I'm so glad I did." right? Just like you said, I think it's amazing. What can medical students, pre-med students, trainees, anyone in healthcare, they go on your website or they follow you on your socials, what kind of content can they find and would be of interest to them?
Good question. So if we start on my website, I have a lot of blog posts that are very specific for different needs. First one is having disabilities. So there is a one blog post specifically that I'm thinking of that goes through different types of ways to start the accommodations process, talks about what is a disability. It will bring in videos both from my podcast and from other resources um, to how to ask for accommodations for their board exams, for school, for residency. And then I have different sections for different levels in medicine, in medical school. So talking about the different taboos, which really can go for all years, but it's kind of more geared to the first year medical students, to kind of put that all out there of what are the biggest taboos, what are the hidden curriculum, things that people won't talk about, but to validate that they exist. There are blog posts, and each of them has an associated podcast episode for failing board exams or taking a leave of absence. So for all the different challenges that I've gone through, there is a set resource for it. And then there's also sections where I really started to learn narrative medicine and start to learn how to take patient examples that I've experienced and kind of look back at them, look how they relate to the greater context and how I can take those experiences to be a better clinician in the future. So there are narrative medicine blog posts that help me learn about individuals with substance use disorders and kind of helped me relate to them, kind of recognize the vulnerability, recognize the stigmas on it, how I can then treat them in the future with the proper resources. So yeah, and then there are also episodes talking about more specifically my own health conditions with endometriosis and then also infertility. I went through infertility when I was on my leave of absence. I wasn't specifically trying to have children. Both my husband and I are doctors, now residents, but we were planning on having children after residency. And when I found out I had a health condition that led me to have infertility, I had to go through a lot earlier process of starting to get my eggs frozen and embryos frozen. So I now have this new perspective that a lot of people don't start thinking about until residency or after. Believe that women physicians have about, I think it's 2 times the infertility rate than the general population. I think I can't remember the statistics right now. I think it's like 1 in 5 versus, yes, that's what it was. I think it's 1 in 5 female physicians have infertility versus the general population is 1 in 8.
Wow.
And so it is a big problem. So I've used that opportunity to connect with AMWA, the American Women's Association, American Medical Women's Association. I'm a part of their infertility committee. I'll be a part of their infertility summit early next year. So it's allowed me to connect with other physicians and other individuals that have struggled similarly to me, but then also be able to provide those resources. So I have blog posts and podcast episodes where I go through what it's like to have your eggs removed, what it's like to go through those infertility injections. So not just to help future physicians, but also help patients if they're ever going through that process, kind of what it's like. So anyway, those are just some things that I also have a section where I do include all the places that I've written in. So all the narrative medicine pieces that I've written, I kind of create a location where individuals can go see them, like a hub, um, because I have had that privilege of being able to share my story in different mediums, through other people's podcasts like yours, and through writing. So I also have a hub where I put those, and then I have another hub of just upcoming events that I've attended that were meaningful to me and can be meaningful to other medical students. So the wellness one is already on there. It's already very
Awesome. If anybody has not checked out her website, it's a treasure trove full of so much valuable information for medical students and beyond. I think anybody can really benefit from learning from you.
Thank you.
Yes. You you cover so much in the content you're putting out. I think it's more than just medical school success tips, right? It's so much more than that. You know what I mean? And I'm sure you already are and are going to continue to resonate with so many physicians in training, right? Because these are not resources that are provided at medical schools. It's not built into the curriculum, right? For students who are going through stuff outside of the traditional course difficulties and whatnot and studying difficulties. So many students, I'm sure, are and are going to continue to resonate with your material, and you're helping a lot of people. I'm confident in that. So truly, thank you. What's coming up for you, Dr. Moss, in the future? Anything you want to tease for our audience, or for the MedPsych Moss realm? You just hear yourself in your personal professional journey. Anything coming up at all?
Hmm. It's a good question, honestly. I know that I spent a lot of time over the past couple months before I started residency, um, interviewing a lot of medical students, a lot of doctors, a lot of people through the health profession because I knew I wouldn't have the time to interview them during residency. So I'm very excited to be publishing them out every 1 to 2 weeks. So my podcast is Life as a Patient Doctor. So sharing the stories of humanity across the health profession. So I'm really excited to share all those amazing stories. And then I'm also looking for medical students to help us publish, help us edit, and I want to start researching the using the data from those stories and start actually publishing them. So I have a couple medical students that already have been helping me edit, but now we're going to start actually looking at the recordings from a research lens, and that way we can start publishing, because we know in the scientific community we listen to when something's published, not as much other ways. So we're going to start turning that information, that knowledge, into actual posters and publications so we can get that knowledge out there to show that people are struggling in silence. It's not just one or two individuals.
Amazing.
So
Now, I just
cool.
want to plug, by the way, that Dr. Moss, I hope this feels like something honorable for you. But this is the 10th episode of the Upward Spiral podcast, number
Yay!
10.
Amazing.
So, Dr. Moss, yeah. So, thank you for being our 10th guest.
Love it.
Yeah. And so I just wanted to put that in there.
Yeah, that's a huge
and
deal.
yeah. So, congrats, Dr. G. And thank you. So, one question I want to ask, this might catch you off your toes a little bit, but have you ever thought, or as a thought crossed your mind, of writing a book about your journey?
Yes. So that was actually where I started. Originally, before my podcast, before my website, I was going to do a book. And so I started a book during my leave of absence, where it was part of my own way. I think my therapist recommended it, because I had the same therapist from my first year of medical school till today as a resident. And he mentioned that. So I started writing as a way to deal with the struggles of being in a leave of absence, financial struggles that I was going with because I didn't have any financial support during the leave of absence. And so I have multiple chapters that I've written. But then but then through writing it, um, at some point it shifted well, let's make a blog post. Oh, let's make a website. And then it's turned into to what it is today. Last December, I decided to turn my blog post into verbal because I heard that a lot of people weren't reading my podcast or my blog posts. So that's why I created the podcast the past year. Yeah, I guess this is month 10 of the podcast. And that was my motivation at first. I was just going to turn my blog post into verbal to get it out there. And it morphed into, okay, well, not just my story. I've talked to other people. Let's see who else is willing to share their story. And yeah, here we are today.
Awesome.
Wow.
But yes,
Similar to
book will be coming in the future.
good.
Once
Good. I was
once
gonna
I
say.
once I kind of finish this plot, I've learned because I have a bad habit of doing too many things at once. So
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
right now, my thing is okay, I'm going to do this podcast.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that once I can get medical students to edit. I can stop working on my podcast and maybe I can go back to doing that book.
So I was gonna say that's a similar road to what got me to my book is, my psychologist told me to write these things down. And then once I started speaking, it was like, well, I think I can reach a lot of people if I turn this into a book.
Mm,
So I do hope you return to your book. Any publishers watching, please reach out to Dr. Moss because
please.
this sounds like a great book and a great movie. So it sounds gee, any thoughts on that?
I can't wait to read it. I'm looking
Aw,
forward.
Yeah,
thank you. Yeah,
sounds great.
I think there's a couple hundred pages already written, it mixed up, but like I said, I'm like, I had too many things at once. At some point, I need to remember that I'm in residency.
I totally relate to that. I'm usually doing a million things at once.
I think it's a
Right.
doctor thing, honestly.
It totally
Yeah,
is.
ditto. Yeah, so true. So, Stephanie, where can our audience find you?
Right. I like to just send everyone to my website because it makes it easier. Because on the website, MedPsychMoss, MEDPSYC, then my last name, MOSS.com, MedPsychMoss. I know some people add in an H, no H. MedPsychMoss to combine medicine and psychiatry or psychology. And that's where you can get linked to my podcast, to my blog posts, to all of the social medias. I'm everywhere, MedPsychMoss on social media. And yeah, I hope to connect with all of you that also wants to talk about just the community within medicine.
Dr. G, any final words?
Thank you for being with us and thank you for the work that you're doing. It's so incredible because I think about myself in medical school and residency, and there's always that fear too of the people who are running it judging you for putting this stuff out there and being honest and stuff. And I give you so much credit and so much acknowledgement. Thank you for your bravery. You are making this path so much more manageable for so many people, and it's incredible.
Thank you. That is the goal.
100%. So follow Dr. Moss. She is at her website, MedPsychMoss, no H at the end of psych.com. Please check out her content and check out both of these two wonderful physicians at our virtual wellness retreat coming December 18th. It's going to be really, really wonderful. And I got to tell you, Stephanie, I'm excited to follow your journey. So
Yes, thank you.
best of luck and thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. All right, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you. See you on December 18th.